Sarah sat motionless on the couch while her Uncle Adam stood a few feet away, the glow of the fireplace dancing over the room. Despite being quiet, his voice was full with emotion. "Sarah, you don't get it. I had been suppressing this for years." He moved closer, his eyes meeting hers, and she blinked, gasping for air. He whispered, his palm grazing hers, "Tell me to leave if this is too much." The warmth of his touch sent goosebumps down her spine, making her heart beat. Family get-togethers were always a flurry of laughing, stories, and cherished memories, a mixture of mayhem and coziness. For Sarah, the annual winter get-together was no different. Except this year, it was hosted at her Uncle Adam's secluded cabin in the woods. Adam, the younger brother of her mother, had always been a bit mysterious. His gentle charm and rough demeanor had always set apart from the rest of the family, although he was only a little over 10 years older than Sarah. His intelligence, his self-assurance, and the way he seemed to control a room without trying were all things Sarah had always admired in an abstract sense. However, something felt different this year. Perhaps it was the cabin's cozy atmosphere, or the way Adam seemed to focus on her for longer than normal. Sarah was unable to deny the subtle change in their chemistry, whatever it was. On the second evening of the trip, the family gathered around the fireplace after dinner. The room buzzed with chatter as Sarah sat near the fire, lost in thought. Adam joined her, handing her a glass of wine. He smiled slightly and remarked, "You seemed like you could use this." She accepted the glass and said, "Thanks." As usual, their talk flowed naturally as they engaged in informal conversation. However, the tone between them changed as the evening went on and the others started to go to sleep. Adam replied abruptly and softly, "Sarah, you've matured so much." Her cheeks flushed as she looked at him. "Thanks, I suppose." "No, I mean it," he continued, his gaze steady. "You're not the same kid I remember. You're remarkable." The compliment caught her off guard, and she struggled to find a response. "That's sweet of you to say," she managed, her voice faltering. Adam's expression grew more serious. "I'm not just saying it to be sweet. You should know that." The air between them grew heavier as Adam's words lingered. Sarah felt her heart quicken, unsure of how to navigate the sudden intensity of the moment. "Adam, I think I'm going to call it a night," she said, standing and reaching for her empty glass. But as she turned to leave, his hand lightly caught hers. "Sarah, wait." She froze, her pulse racing as she turned back to face him. "What is it?" He hesitated, his jaw tightening. "I don't want to make you uncomfortable," he said carefully, "but I need to tell you something." Her stomach twisted as she waited for him to continue. "Okay. I've been holding this in for a long time," he admitted, his voice low. "And I know it's wrong, but I can't pretend anymore. I feel something for you, something I know I shouldn't." Sarah's breath caught, her mind spinning. "Adam, we can't." "I know," he interrupted, his gaze intense. "But I had to say it. You deserve to know." She stared at him, her emotions warring within her. "This is insane," she whispered. "You're my uncle." "Only by title," he countered, his voice firm but laced with vulnerability. "We're just two people, Sarah. That's how I see it." Her chest tightened as she searched his eyes, her own feelings tangled and overwhelming. "Adam, this is so complicated." "It is," he agreed, stepping closer. "But tell me to leave, and I will. Say the word, and I'll never bring this up again." Her lips parted, the words on the tip of her tongue. But they wouldn't come. Instead, she stood frozen as Adam closed the distance between them, his hand brushing hers. The warmth of his touch sent a shiver down her spine, and before she could stop herself, she leaned into him, her breath hitching as their lips met in a tentative kiss. The kiss deepened, their restraint crumbling as weeks, maybe even years of suppressed emotions spilled over. Adam's hands moved to her waist, pulling her closer as Sarah's fingers tangled in his hair. "You're impossible," she murmured against his lips, her voice trembling. "And you're unforgettable," he replied, his tone thick with emotion. The room, lit only by the flickering flames of the fireplace, became their cocoon as they surrendered completely to the connection they had been fighting. Sarah woke to the soft light of dawn streaming through the cabin's large windows. Her chest tightened as the events of the night before came rushing back. She turned to find Adam sitting on the edge of the couch, his back to her. "We need to talk," she said softly, her voice breaking the silence. "I know," he replied, his tone heavy. This can't happen again, she continued, though her words lacked conviction. Adam turned to face her, his expression conflicted. I don't regret it, he said firmly, but I'll respect your decision. Before she could respond, the sound of footsteps echoed from the hallway. Her mom's voice called out, cheerful and oblivious. Good morning, you two. Coffee's ready. Sarah's heart raced as Adam stood, offering her a faint smile. We'll figure this out, he said quietly before walking away. As the family gathered for breakfast, Sarah and Adam exchanged fleeting glances, their secret simmering just beneath the surface. But as the day wore on, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning, and that the line they had crossed was one they could never uncross. As the day unfolded, Sarah felt as though she were walking on a tightrope, every moment fraught with the fear of discovery. Adam's lingering glances across the breakfast table, the way his hand brushed hers when he handed her the coffee, it all felt amplified in the quiet tension that hung between them. Her mother, blissfully unaware, chatted animatedly about family plans for the day. Adam, you're coming with us for the hike, right? She asked, her tone cheerful. Adam glanced at Sarah before nodding. Of course, he replied smoothly. Sarah's stomach churned at the thought of spending the day so close to him, their secret simmering beneath the surface. She avoided his gaze, focusing on her plate, but her mind was a whirlwind of emotions. The group set off into the woods, the crisp winter air biting at their cheeks. Sarah trailed behind, hoping to create some distance, but Adam fell back to walk beside her. You're awfully quiet, he said softly, his voice low enough that only she could hear. I'm just tired, she replied, keeping her gaze on the ground. Sarah, we need to talk about last night, he pressed, his tone serious. She stopped abruptly, turning to face him. Not here, she hissed, glancing at the rest of the family ahead. Adam's expression softened. Then later, he said. We can't just ignore this. Later that evening, after the family had retired to their rooms, Sarah found herself in the living room, staring into the dying embers of the fireplace. She heard footsteps behind her and knew without turning that it was Adam. Couldn't sleep? He asked, his voice soft. She shook her head, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. I can't stop thinking about it, she admitted. He moved to stand beside her, his presence warm and steady. Neither can I. She looked up at him, her eyes filled with a mix of longing and fear. Adam, this can't happen again. It's too much, too risky. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. I know, he said, his voice barely above a whisper, but that doesn't make it any less real. The air between them grew thick as his hand lingered near her cheek. Tell me you don't feel the same, he said, his gaze piercing, and I'll walk away. Her breath hitched. Her words caught in her throat. She knew what she should say, but her heart refused to let her. Instead, she closed the distance between them, her lips meeting his in a kiss that was desperate and filled with all the emotions she couldn't put into words. Adam responded instantly, his arms wrapping around her as he pulled her closer. Their connection was electric, every touch igniting a fire that consumed them both. You're driving me crazy, she murmured against his lips, her voice trembling. And you're all I think about, he replied, his tone thick with emotion. The room became their sanctuary as they gave in once again, the world outside fading into nothingness. Sarah woke to the soft light of dawn filtering through the cabin's windows. Her heart sank as the events of the night replayed in her mind. She sat up, pulling the blanket around herself as she glanced at Adam, who was already awake and sitting in a chair by the window. We can't keep doing this, she said softly, breaking the silence. He turned to her, his expression calm but resolute. I know, he said, but I'm not ready to let this go. Adam, she began, her voice trembling. What if someone finds out? What happens to us then? We'll handle it, he said firmly. Together. Before she could respond, the sound of voices drifted up from the kitchen. Their family was awake, the day beginning, and with it, the weight of their secret loomed larger than ever. As they dressed and prepared to face the family, Adam caught her hand, his grip steady. This isn't over, Sarah, he said quietly. I mean it. She nodded, her chest tightening as they made their way downstairs. The smell of coffee and pancakes filled the air, a stark contrast to the storm brewing within her. Her mother greeted them cheerfully, oblivious to the tension that lingered between them. But as the morning wore on, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching her. Later, as she stepped outside for fresh air, she felt a presence behind her. Turning, she found her cousin Emily, her expression unreadable. "Sarah," Emily began, her tone cautious, "I saw you and Adam last night." Sarah's heart stopped, her breath catching. "Emily, Don't worry," Emily interrupted, her voice soft. "I won't say anything, but be careful." Sarah's chest tightened as Emily walked away, leaving her alone with the weight of what she'd just revealed. The house grew quieter as the evening stretched into the night. Sarah sat on the edge of her bed, the weight of the day pressing down on her. Her cousin Emily's words replayed in her mind. "Be careful." A soft knock on her door startled her. She hesitated, her heart racing, before crossing the room and opening it. Adam stood there, his expression serious but laced with something she couldn't quite place. Longing, perhaps, or regret. "Can we talk?" he asked softly. Sarah glanced down the hallway to ensure no one was around, then stepped aside, letting him in. He closed the door behind him, the click of the latch echoing in the stillness. "Adam, this has to stop," she began, her voice trembling. "I know," he replied, his gaze locking onto hers. "But I can't stop thinking about you, Sarah. I can't pretend last night didn't happen." She turned away, her arms crossed as she tried to steady herself. "This is insane," she whispered. "We're family. People will never understand." "Then let them think what they want," he said, stepping closer. "What I feel for you, it's real, and I know you feel it too." Her breath hitched as his words sank in. "Adam, it's not that simple." "It's never going to be simple," he said, his voice low and filled with emotion. "But that doesn't make it any less real." When she turned to face him, his hand reached out, brushing her cheek. The warmth of his touch sent a shiver down her spine, and the walls she had been trying to build between them began to crumble. "I shouldn't want this," she murmured, her voice trembling. "But you do," he replied, his gaze steady. Before she could respond, he leaned in, capturing her lips in a kiss that was slow and deliberate, filled with everything they had been holding back. Her resolve melted as she responded, her hands finding their way to his shoulders as the kiss deepened. "You're impossible," she whispered against his lips, her voice shaky. "And you're unforgettable," he replied, his tone thick with desire. Adam guided her toward the bed, his movements careful yet confident, as if savoring every moment. The room seemed to shrink around them, the weight of their connection consuming them entirely. Just as the tension reached its peak, the sound of footsteps in the hallway made them freeze. Sarah's heart pounded as she heard the faint creak of floorboards. "Someone's coming," she whispered, her voice filled with panic. Adam stood quickly, straightening his shirt as he moved toward the door. He cracked it open, peering out into the dimly lit hallway. After a moment, he turned back to her, his expression serious. "It's Emily," he said quietly. Sarah's stomach dropped as a soft knock sounded at the door. She quickly adjusted her clothes and opened it, trying to appear composed. Emily stood there, her gaze flicking between them. "I knew it," she said softly, her tone more curious than accusatory. "Emily, it's not what you think," Sarah began, her voice shaky. Emily raised a hand, cutting her off. "I'm not here to judge," she said, her eyes narrowing slightly. "But you two need to be careful. People will notice." Adam stepped forward, his expression calm but firm. "We will," he said. "Thank you." Emily gave a small nod before turning and disappearing down the hallway. As the door clicked shut, Sarah let out a shaky breath, her hands trembling. "This is a disaster," she murmured. Adam pulled her into his arms, his embrace steadying her. "We'll figure it out," he said softly. "Together." Though her mind was still spinning, Sarah felt a strange sense of calm in his presence. Whatever came next, they would face it, no matter how complicated or forbidden it was.